Okay, next up on Time Space Visualiser live streaming event this afternoon. One voice that has been linked with Doctor Who. It's the fans' best friend, K9, but no as Leeson. Good evening, John. How are you?
Well, I'm very well, thank you kindly. In fact, affirmatively good. How's that?
Got it out of the way already. It's great.
Indeed, yeah.
Are you going
First base.
interview in the voice?
Indeed.
Maybe not. John, how are you? Keeping safe?
Yes, I am. I'm in fact a sheltered person these days. The NHS here, our National Health Service, has kept me indoors. I can't go out anywhere except into my garden. So I'm being a prisoner until they tell me I can stop, basically.
Well, you're in the safest place, that's for sure. And the last time I saw you, if I recall correctly, was in Sheffield in March, and that just seems time ago, doesn't it?
It is, yes, indeed. Well, what has happened since March, and here we are towards the end of April? My goodness me, the world has changed.
But I must admit, the one thing I remember about seeing you in Sheffield, we did share a rather fine pint of beer, as I recall. So that's always a good thing to do when you meet up with friends.
Indeed, indeed.
John, let's dive straight into I suppose the little waggy-tailed dog himself, K9. How did the part come across for you? How did it come about?
Well, very strangely, my agent phoned up. This is way back in 1977. He phoned up and he said, he's a lovely old guy. He said, "John, I've just had a call from the BBC," as though he'd never had a call from the BBC in his life before. And he said, "They want to know if you'd like to play not just one, but 2 parts in Doctor Who. What do you think?" So I thought, wow, this is fantastic, brilliant. He said, no, steady. So what's the matter, Max? I said, well, they're only voice parts, I'm afraid. Oh, well, here I was at a part of my career that I really wanted to get my face around the business a little bit more. It's been around, let's face it. But I said, well, I don't know, Max. He said, what are the parts? Well, here's the thing, he said. One of the parts is the voice of a virus. Yes, well, here we are in rather difficult times talking about viruses.
Indeed.
And I played the voice of the virus of the swarm in a storyline back in 1977 called The Invisible Enemy. Yes, and here's a certain person who lived down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington calling the whole thing The Invisible Enemy. So I apologize to everybody, but I did play this virus, and voice of the virus, I should say. And I also played the voice of this robot dog, K9. Now, this was all very strange, but Max suggested I went to see Graham Williams, who was the producer at that time, and I did. And he said, well, I can't show you K9 because he's still in the workshops being finished off. They're still building him. But I've got a blueprint here, and that's what K9 looks like. Could you do a voice for him? So I thought, well, this was in the days of those lovely reel-to-reel tape recorders, and I had one at home. And I said, I'll put some voices down for you if you like. But I thought to myself, well, take the voice up an octave, make it sound sort of tinny, and try and make it sort of sound mechanical as well. And it sort of worked in a strange way. Now then, I got 2 weeks later urgent phone calls from the BBC saying, "John, have you accepted the parts?" Because they hadn't heard from me, or from Max, I should say. So I said, "Yeah, well, yes, why not?" Well, they're only in for one storyline, I'm afraid, but that won't matter, will it? So I thought, no, let's do the job. And here I am now in 2020, still playing the voice of K9 in audio dramas for Big Finish, which are licensed by the BBC and this, that, and the other. Still playing alongside Tom Baker, Louise Jameson, Lalla Ward. Yeah, it's a job that never went away. But I must tell you, one of the thoughts I had about K9, which has only come up fairly recently, is that K9's longevity in the series is partly due to the fact that the role of the wily servant goes straight back to Commedia dell'arte in the theatre. And that's at the end of the 17th, beginning of the 18th century. And that is a sort of fixed point of drama. And so that sort of character relationship has great strength, and it's kept me going, I must say. So there you go.
Well, 43 years later it is, in fact, because it was
on
27 screen for the very first time. And you're right, actually, because K9 became that little bit of a comic foil against the sort of some of the dramatic storylines or whatever at the time. Going back to The Invisible Enemy, though, obviously playing the two parts in that, how did you about the how did that work?
Well, because the physical module that was the virus looked like a piece of it looked like a block of seaweed. Actually, it was a very strange character indeed. I thought of actually putting on a voice that sounded like a Christmas cake that had been left out for far too long and was getting a little sort of blue fur growing around it. So it was sort of horrid and nasty and whatever. But I do remember the first studio sessions I had. K9, I knew for a start, wasn't going to stay in the story at all because he was consistently breaking down. And whoever was looking after him at the time, all I could see was his backside with his head inside K9 trying to get him to work. And I thought, well, studio time is so expensive. You know, they're not going to keep this little character around for terribly long. And was I proved wrong? Well, yes, I guess.
You were. And is it right that you, through rehearsals, you actually almost into the part itself and could be crawling around the rehearsal studio as K9?
Well, yes, indeed, because K9 in the first rehearsal period still was being built in the workshops. So I thought, well, I might as well be K9. And so I ran around on the floor being K9. And everybody thought, oh, this is the best thing since sliced bread. But I don't know. At least what it did was to provide me with a dynamic that was very useful, because I had then an eye-to-eye relationship with Tom Baker, with Louise Jameson, with the other characters. And that was extremely helpful to me later on in terms of performance. And Tom and I, of course, are completely different in terms of the way we work at things and approach things. But we got on like a house on fire. The relationship was solid from the very start.
And that's always good when you're coming into a sort of an established cast, and particularly one led by such a gregarious character as Tom is.
Yes.
And where would you be positioned in the studio? So once we got into filming, you just offset delivering lines? How did that work?
Yeah, basically I was just offset delivering lines as long as I got a mic. I was mic'd up to do it, and as long as I had sight of what was going on the floor of the studio, that was fine, you know. Equally, in terms of location filming, I was either not taken there at all, and but initially, Tom wanted me to be there. He always wanted me to be on location, so we did have this relationship going. I remember it was a wonderful occasion. We were filming a story called Stones of Blood, and that was being filmed out at the Rollright Stones, the prehistoric stone circle in, I don't know, Somerset or Wiltshire or somewhere like that. And I was taken down to the location when they were filming there, and I sat in one of those enormous great BBC vans. I think they call it a scanner. I was in the driver's seat of this scanner with a lip mic and a pair of headphones, so I could hear what was going on half a mile down the road where they were filming, way out of my sight, way out of my sight. But I heard Darrell Blake, who was the director at the time, call through, "Okay, everybody, we're clear on that particular scene. Take 5, everybody, and we'll set up for the next one." And then Tom's voice cuts through into my ears. He says, "John, have you got your Times crossword with you?" And indeed, I had got my time, because we used to do this in rehearsals, quite a lot when we weren't playing the scenes. So we said, "Well, what do you think about 13 across? Could it be elephant, do you think?" And, we just did some clues together. It's fine. Okay, I thought nothing more about it. My voice was being fed right down to the location. And of course, I could hear whatever was being broadcast up to me. Now, what I didn't know, and what I couldn't possibly have seen, was what all the locals who'd come to watch the filming could see and hear. There is Tom Baker, sitting in the sunshine on a grass verge, having been stood down for a little while, and there's K9 plonked beside him on the grass, and both of them are doing the Times crossword together. How about that?
That's a lovely little story. Fair. I think it goes to show that the sort of relationship I think you and Tom formed as you were in that sort of era with him. Technical issues aside, what was the reaction on set to K9?
Usually very positive, except when he didn't perform well, and he had to have technical assistance to get him going. I mean, if you think of the distance between my brain working as K9 and this rather restricted module that's struggling to move about, it's very strange indeed. But no, K9 he became quite popular quite quickly. And I think the other actors I worked with, in fact, it's amazing. Stones of Blood. Beatrix Lehmann was a member of the cast, and she was most distinguished actress, and fantastic. The number of stars of the day who gave their eye teeth to appear alongside Tom Baker in Doctor Who was just incredible. Absolutely amazing. And so vicariously, I have rubbed shoulders vocally with a lot of very fine names indeed.
You have indeed. There was certainly the cast lists were the guest cast lists. It's fair to say were rich reading back in those days, particularly in that.
Indeed.
It was riding high in its popularity, so who didn't want a part of that? I think.
No.
But you took the decision I suppose in hindsight, for the right reasons, but you took the decision to leave the part. What brought that about?
Well, simply that I am a freelance jobbing actor. It's as simple as that. My basic career had been in theatre. I started in weekly rep way back in 1964, which was before I was born. No, it wasn't before I was born. 1964, straight out of RADA, and I did a split week season of 6 weeks at Frinton-on-Sea in Essex. So you started rehearsing halfway through the week before you were going to open, and then people could actually see 2 plays each week across the 6-week season, which meant, of course, that you, as an actor, had to have 2 plays in your head at the same time, which was rather disastrous, I'm afraid, sometimes, because if there were lines in the play you were doing that were similar to the play that you'd just done, the chance of actually slipping back into last week or the earlier part of the week's play was obvious. But no, the repertory system was absolutely wonderful. I'm so sad it no longer exists. It was a perfect learning vehicle for actors. You were stretched to play, I'm a character actor, obviously, but you were stretched to play all sorts of parts that nobody in their right minds would have cast you for in the first place. So you learned your craft. All right, you learned all the technical stuff at drama school, but then you're out there and you're having to do it in front of an audience. And so that was a brilliant discipline. Hard work. I remember at Frinton, I think one was paid £6 a week. Yes, all right, okay. Yes, but that was true.
Excited by it, but I'm sure it was a lot of money.
Yep. Well, we sort of got by. We were too busy to go and do anything else, weren't we? We really were. It was such a difference for us.
It's a great.
But yes, I did Frinton, Birmingham, Nottingham Playhouse, or Newcastle Playhouse, Salisbury, whatever, all over the place. And oh yeah, I must tell you about Taunton. Taunton was one of my last rep appearances. I did a lovely season there, and the chairman of the theatre, the chairman of the Friends of the Theatre, rather, threw a party for all the cast at the end of the season. And he came to me and he said, "John, bless you, you've had a fantastic season here, and we're so sorry to be losing you back to London. Tell me, are you planning to take up this acting thing then?" That was the chairman of the Friends of the Theatre in Taunton. What could one say?
Not an awful lot, I think.
Yes, I did a lot of work in town, in West End. I was in West End comedies and things for about 3 years consecutively. I did a wonderful play called Flint with Michael Hordern and Vivian Merchant way back at the Criterion Theatre. There's a little story there. My wife came to collect me from the theatre one night because in comes to the stage door one of the producers, and that's Harold Pinter, very famous writer. Harold Pinter is one of a triumvirate of producers, one of 3 producers. And the stage doorkeeper in that time was a little old guy called Harry, who was the oldest stage doorkeeper in London, and he was like a trapdoor spider. Nobody crosses his threshold without being challenged. He said, sorry, who are you? Who are you? Judy's waiting for me in that area there. And Harold Pinter says to Harry, I mean, listen, I'm one of the management. You'll see me coming in and out all the time. So don't worry about it. You must let. Well, what have you come for? The house is up. The curtain's up. Uh, so I said, yes, I know. I've come to see my wife. Well, who's your wife then? Well, that's Vivian Merchant. Well, it was at the time. Vivian Merchant. Well, why didn't you tell me you were Mr. Merchant in the first place? I'd have let you in. True.
Isn't it right? You got married once in 3 days. So you got married 3 times.
Well, yeah, on my very own real wedding day, back in '69, yes, I was in town playing in a play called Plaza Suite, a four-hander by Neil Simon at the Comedy Theatre, or which I can't remember which theatre it was at the time. It doesn't matter. But I had to leave my own wedding. I got married in the morning in Kensington. My father, who was a clergyman, married Judy and myself. So that happened. And then I just got back to the hotel where there was a reception going on. But I had to leave the reception in order to get back in time to play the matinee. And then, of course, the guests came to see the evening show, which was nice. And what was I playing? I was playing a bridegroom who was getting married during the course of the play. So there was me, 3 weddings on my own wedding day.
It's a story to tell for sure, that. Did television come soon after? I mean, you were obviously doing a lot of theatre there. You've got a sort of a break in TV. If I'm correct, one of your early TVs was the original Bungle in Rainbow.
Yes, indeed. A fairly warm part to play, I think. We filmed down in Teddington Studios, which are it's now a block of flats. The Teddington Studios gone. But yes, somebody decided that they wanted me to be a sort of jumping around and excitable character inside this bear suit. And the guy who designed the bear suit, I think, designed all the costumes for the Covent Garden production of some animal thing. I don't know what. But I had to have a complete mask made with plaster all over my face and 2 straws up my nose so I could breathe. And he'd modelled the fur head based on my own face. Not a terribly comfortable procedure, I can tell you. And I worked alongside the presenter, David Cook, writer David Cook, actor David Cook, no longer with us, so very sadly. But the trouble was that the eyes in the mask that had been made so carefully for me weren't coterminous with my own eyes. And so it was a leap of faith that Bungle took around this tiny little studio at Teddington. But the heat, you wouldn't believe. You've got a small studio, bright lights, of course, and it's all children's stuff, this, that, and the other. So it's primary colours and all that. But I was losing weight at such a rate. And again, I wanted to get my face around the business, which is going back to your original question, why did I leave playing K9? Because, I couldn't see where it was going to go. I've done a tremendous amount of voice work in my time. BBC, in fact, what did I do? I did British Forces Broadcasting. I was a presenter there over in Germany. I did presenting for Channel 4 television, Out of Vision. So the voice has been very busy across my career as a whole. So there we are.
Indeed. I won't because it certainly wasn't, but you made me laugh the last time you told me a story about a part that you'd landed on Dad's Army, and I wondered if you wouldn't retell that story.
Dad's Army, yes, indeed. In fact, I was cast in a story called Sons of the Sea in Dad's Army as a squatty, as an ordinary soldier. But the joy of it was that I had, in fact, the plot line to deliver halfway through the piece. First of all, let's get back to the beginning. First of all, a week or so beforehand, before being fitted out, I had to go to the BBC and be given the #1 military haircut, which was customary, of course, for World War II soldiers, in absolute scalping. And I'd not been married for very long, and I'm sure Judy wanted me to have hair she could get hold of, but that's another matter altogether. Um, um, so I came back from that particular haircut session absolutely shorn, and made my peace with Judy as best I could, I think. But then the following week, I was called in by the BBC costume department for Dad's Army. And the costume department for Dad's Army decided that underneath my tin hat as the soldier, I would have a balaclava helmet. And all anybody could ever see of me was this little face, with just masked completely by this balaclava helmet and a tin hat on top. But the lines I had, of course, were if you go and find Sons of the Sea and watch it, it's a very good, very good episode, that one. You'll find out why I did quite well in it, I think.
It's a great story. I love it every time I hear it. So you left Doctor Who for a year. You were invited back. You came back, didn't you, into Doctor Who then? And
Yes, I did come back. There was a change of producer by then. And I think I was told that they were planning to run K9 out of the series across 3 or 4 episodes. And would I mind possibly coming back, because the other chap who was doing K9's voice at the time had enough, and he wanted to go and do various things. So I said, yes, why not? And back I came. And subsequently, of course, there was the Sarah Jane Adventures, which was just magic. Because Liz Sladen and husband Brian actually lived about a quarter of a mile from where I live in West London. And we used to sort of see each other in the village street that connects us both. But Liz was just a heaven sent, I think. Lovely storylines she had. She had great command, great poise. But with the kids, with the children who were involved in the cast, she was absolutely their mother. You couldn't say anything further than that. She was such a sort of trustworthy character. And that sort of shone through in her portrayal of Sarah Jane Smith, I think very much so. It was a great, great sadness to have lost her, real sadness to have lost her.
And it is, in fact, the 9th anniversary this week of her death, and we still feel it very hard in fandom, and we miss it a great deal, it's fair to say.
Yeah.
But you had the joy of working with her, and you spoke fondly of her there, and I think that's the same for whoever encountered Liz, that she was just a joy to work with.
Absolutely so. Absolutely. There's nobody on the Doctor Who firmament that I haven't enjoyed working with, but she's up there as a star. Really, she is. Bless her.
She is. Bless her indeed. Just before we finish up, I was intrigued. I did a little bit of research, and I didn't need to do much because I know quite a lot about you as it is. But I didn't realise you set questions.
Yes, I did. This was in the days when I was doing sort of announcing and things out of vision for the BBC, and the head of presentation at the time, who was a sort of mutual friend of my wife and myself, he said, "John, you've got a brain that's full of rubbish. No, not rubbish, but you've got so much up there. Can I introduce you to Bill Wright?" Who's Bill Wright? Well, he's the producer, was in those days, of Mastermind, the very first series, or first couple of series. Would you mind writing some questions, general knowledge questions for Mastermind? So I thought, wow, well, I don't mind doing that. And I looked for the most obscure things I could possibly find to ask about. I must have probably set round about a couple of thousand questions across my question setting for Mastermind. But the BBC only paid me for the questions that were actually used on air. And all the questions, anyway, had to have 3 cast iron references. So you had to do a little bit of research in order to make sure that they stood up properly and didn't evoke any dissent from viewers and this, that, and the other. And I got paid for each question a wonderful sum of money. It was 75 pence. There you go.
That makes rep seem really, really well paid, doesn't it?
Doesn't it just? Yeah.
John, for 43 years as K9, I'm convinced that you're going to be with us for many years to come, particularly now that you're doing Big Finish and all the other sort of spin-offs and various things. Always a pleasure to grab some time with you. Thanks very much for giving up some time to speak with us here today on our Time Space Visualiser. John, be safe, look after yourself, hope to see you soon.
Will do. Thank you very much, Jason. I've certainly enjoyed our chat. It's been great fun.